On fields of grass and heather, here in the south of the Netherlands, centuries ago, there was a fiery spirit walking around. A fiery spirit who muttered to himself, "Where do I put it? Where do I put it? Where in God's name do I put it?" A fiery spirit who scared the living daylights out of people. A fiery spirit known as the Gloeiige. And today, I'd like to tell you all about him. My name is Gloeiige. Welcome to Tales of Time Gone By. The Netherlands has many beautiful, exciting, funny and mysterious folk tales about fiery ghosts, misty figures, stormy animals, flying ships and many more magical phenomena. I will take you to the places where they come from. There I bring them to life with storytelling and music. Watch, listen and experience the tales of time gone by. Like most ghosts, this fiery spirit was once a human who was a farmer who lived in the village of Zeelst, which is close to the city of Eindhoven. He had a large grass field with a lot of sheep on it, but he wanted something bigger. The field of his neighbor looked luscious and green, so he thought to himself, can I not just take a part of his field? He wouldn't notice. This was not only the field of his neighbor, but it was also just in the next village, the village of Wintelge. So at night, when the sky was dark, he moved his border stone, his boundary stone, and the next day the neighbor didn't notice anything. So the farmer did it again, up to 10 times, so his field became 10 meters bigger to the left. Now his neighbor started to notice something. He thought, do I need glasses, or is my field now much smaller than it once was? So he asked his neighbor, the farmer, did you perhaps change anything? The farmer said, no, this has always been my ground. This has always been Zeelster ground. The neighbor wasn't so sure, so he went to the council of his village and asked them about the same problems that he had. The council knew the farmer, and they knew that he was a man who twisted laws around his own finger. So they went to the farmer to check up on him. The council came to the farmer and knocked on his door and said, so we've heard that you've been messing around with your field. Is that true? The farmer said, no, this has always been my ground. This is Zeelster ground. Okay, is that so? Then prove it to us. Come with us to the boundary stone, and there you swear on God's name that this is your ground. Sure, said the farmer, and he went to get his clogs. He got his clogs at the back door of the house and secretly put a bit of sand from his own ground in the clogs, Zeelster sand. And he walked with the council to the boundary stone. There he stood on his own Zeelster ground, his own Zeelster sand, because he thought he was smart, and said, I swear to God that I'm standing here on my own ground, on Zeelster ground, and I may burn if that is not the case. Nothing happened. And the council couldn't prove that what he was saying was not correct, so they let him go. The farmer became a rich man. He moved the boundary stone even a bit more later in life, and he had a lot of sheep. And on his deathbed, he was laying there thinking he would go to heaven, in which he believed so strongly. He closed his eyes, but when he opened them, he was not in heaven. He was standing on a path next to the field, next to his house, but he didn't recognize his surroundings. In his hands he held the boundary stone. It was glowing fiery red, just like his hands, and even his eyes were aflame and his mouth as well, although he couldn't see that himself. He wanted to put the stone down, but he couldn't. It was glued to his hands. And he muttered to himself, "Where do I put it? Where do I put it? Where in God's name do I put it?" And this way he had to walk around the fields and the forests for centuries. People who met de Gloeiige were scared. Fluit niet met je lippen, roep niet zijn naam. Wijk niet van de paden, blijf niet te lang stilstaan. Maar zie een vlam, daar in de verte. Maak rechtsomkeert, sla de deur achter je dicht. Want hij komt eraan, beter naar huis toe gaan. Geef hem geen hand, voordat je tot as verbrandt. Vuur, 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 de vlammen slaan uit zijn ogen. Vonken sintels zwarte as, spuwend uit zijn mond. Op stoffige paden, langs veld en bos, hoor je hem steunen en klagen, maar hij laat nooit los. Het ware vuur schijnt zacht van binnen de zondaar en zijn zwaar gemoed. Wees gewaarschuwd, gij die luistert, voordat uw hart wordt bekleed met roet. Want hij komt eraan, beter naar huis toe gaan. Geef hem geen hand, voordat je tot as verbrandt. Vuur, 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 de vlammen slaan uit zijn ogen. Vonken sintels zwarte as, spuwend uit zijn mond. Not everyone was afraid of the Gloeiige. There were a few exceptions. There were two farmhands sitting, leaning against a tree, and one said to the other, "I heard that if you whistle, that the Gloeiige comes running right at you." The other one said, "Ha, I don't believe a word of what you're saying. You know what? I'll do it." And he whistled. It was silent. Nothing happened. But it seemed even more silent than before. Even no birds were singing. And suddenly, in the distance, they saw a little light coming closer. The light seemed like a flame, and the flame became a human and flamed with a pole in his hands. And they knew this was the Gloeiige. So they started to run quickly back to their home, and they slammed the door behind them. And just when they slammed the door, they heard a loud smack on the door. They ran upstairs and hid underneath the bed. And only after 15 minutes they dared to come out and look through the window down to see if there was anyone. But they saw nobody. The two farmhands walked down the stairs. It must have been the fear that had taken over their minds. They felt relieved and they opened the back door. But in the back door they saw a black hand ashed on the wood. The smoke still spiraling up into the sky, and it must have been the Gloeiige that had followed them there. The Gloeiige wasn't always bad. As I said, some people weren't afraid, and if you were not afraid, the Gloeiige could even help you. There was a farmer on his way to Eindhoven to put his food on the market the next day. And at night he was with his cart on a muddy road because it was raining a lot, and his cart got stuck. He could not push it forward, he could not pull it forward, and there was no one around to help him. So he thought to himself, I'm gonna ask the Gloeiige. Allee, Gloeiige, span het vuur en help us trekken, is what he said. And in a split second, the flamey man appeared and pulled in 5 minutes his cart all the way down to the city of Eindhoven. And of course, nobody believed his story afterwards. The last person who was not afraid was a priest who was visiting the village of Tongeren. When he arrived, it was pitch black, it was night, and his oil lamp had just died. The people who were supposed to bring him to his sleeping address also did not have a light. And then the priest said, you know what? I'll ask the Gloeiige. He said, Gloeiige, verlicht mijn pad. And the Gloeiige appeared and lit up the path that he was walking on. And this way they could safely go to their destined location. And when they arrived, the Gloeiige disappeared. Nowadays, you don't see the Gloeiige around anymore. And that is all because of a drunken man. This drunken man was walking home from the city to his village. and he had drunk a bit too much, so he was not afraid of anything because of all the alcohol in his blood. Then the Gloeiige passed him by, and the drunken man heard him say, "Where do I put it? Where do I put it? Where in God's name do I put it?" Then the drunken man simply replied, you just put it back where you found it. The Gloeiige turned around, looked him straight into the eyes, and ran away. Then the drunken man heard a loud smack on the ground, saw some fire reaching up into the sky, and saw the last sparks floating on the wind. The drunken man told this story to his friends and family the day after, but nobody believed him. They thought it was just a drunken story, like he had told so many times before. But the Gloeiige has not been seen around anymore since that day. This was the story of the Gloeiige, in its variant from the south of the Netherlands, from the province of Brabant. But this figure actually exists in multiple countries. In Norway he is called Dellegast. In Germany and Luxembourg he is called Feuermann, and in Belgium he is called Vierman. In the Catholic belief system, a fiery ghost was usually a soul that was stuck between heaven and hell, in purgatory, burning for their sins and walking on the earth to do penance for their sins. Because they were so fiery, these spirits, you never shook their hands, because if you did, you could burn to a crisp. You should always give your handkerchief, so that your handkerchief would burn and not you. This story was a collection of 4 stories combined by me, coming from the archive of Dutch folk stories, which is hosted by the Meertens Institute in Amsterdam. You can find all these stories on the website www.verhalenbank.nl. The link is in the description of this video. Most stories are in Dutch, so it might be difficult for you to look at them as an international English-speaking person. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more stories like this, then please like the video on YouTube. Let me know in the comments what more stories you'd like to hear. And let me know if you know any folk stories from around you. If you're in the Netherlands or Belgium, I might come by to record these stories around the area that you live. Thank you for watching. And remember, if you listen carefully enough, there are stories everywhere.